arras jira sumarrata motin nugadoru orten qajelota wadanutuma jedhani didani waloru inafadan gutame minan lagate dalabasa kante nabote tikarate Chafata soba chafsifte sabe soba nuga basifte nabote namaduga daga danachesifte waaqayyo nana olchu dalaba ko gurguru kenasa kanum fakatu kenna biran jiru haqana qabna Gan Yesus mitire loltun janna jedame Gedeon na mitire Gedeon se mitire Yomutti digamu dallana bakoti anta eni lalu wanabdala koti dugan fira koti Yomutti sarbamu mirkisa bakoti anta eni lalu anafqama koti dugan fira koti Namfalma Yenkanu nalabako Namfalma Yenkanu nalabako Anta eni lalu Yenkanu nalabako Ormike ena nalu Yenkanu nalabako Falmadu nalabake Ormike sinale Falmadu nalabake Utulatu digame maniyada yasa Chalifte matesa falmadu besa Utulatu digame maniyada yasa Chalifte matesa falmachum besa Falmadu nalabake Chalifte matesa Falmadu nalabake Falmadu nalabake Chalifte matesa Falmadu nalabake Samun ko namanu budden sobanyachu Enyumako Haile kanorma furachu Samun ko namanu budden sobanyachu Enyumako Haile kanorma furachu senana komachu Namfalma Yenkanu nalabako Namfalma Yenkanu nalabako Jalliseni lalu Yenkanu nalabako Ormike ena nalu Yenkanu nalabako Chummo ichangal mesu David kan dibame dubatin debisu Kannan kabanne mamna tirorisa Faruusa kafudde tangombisa Yesus ummisa Kannan kabanne mamna tirorisa Faruusa kafudde tangombisa Yesus ummisa
Alako ormalado, dalaba koti an orma villado. Alako ormalado, dalaba koti an orma villado.
Galaana keessa taa'eef dhagaan bishaan ta'u iddoo dhufee dataa deebotaa dhaabinnoo balbala isaa lakkooftes lakkoofsa guutuun ta'u sobamaan jiraatini gaaffii keef deebiin ta'u dhugaa kan jaallatu dhugaa fowwaatu sabni dhugaa qabu garboomeen jiraatu dhugaa kan jaallatu dhugaa fowwaatu sabni dhugaa qabu garboomeen jiraatu dhugaa kan jaallatu dhugaa fowwaatu dhaloonni dhiidheeraa milkuun sabaa nyaatu naala baasalaatu atis anis dhugaa fowwanna nutoo dhugaa qabna gandi sobanna atis anis dhugaa fowwannu nutoo dhugaa qabna gandi sobanna.
Thank you very much, Tisho. I hope that excessively long introduction doesn't count to my time. By the way, I saw Trev. It always gives me pleasure to see him. Appreciating Trev, I always, I'm very, very happy to see you. My presentation is on leadership and organization. Some of the issues around linking these two, leadership and organization, have been asked, so I hope I will at least in part answer that. There are two classes of leaderships. One is a core leadership, collective leadership, and then the other one is an individual leader. If we take an organization, it needs both. I'm not talking, just by way of disclaimer, I'm not talking about collective or core leadership. When we talk about KFAO, it has its core leadership. OLF, it has its core leadership. And then they also have leaders, individual leaders. So my topic is about individual leaders, not about core leadership. With this disclaimer, I also want to emphasize the fact that it is extremely important to have core leadership, not just a leader. Our organization's success very much depends on core leadership, which at least our political organizations have been lacking for many, many reasons I don't want to get into now. Also, my presentation is my observation. It's not an expert driven or literature driven presentation. It just is my natural observation. Tisho mentioned organic. I like that word. So if there is anything that I want you to take from my presentation, I can also tell you right away before we get into the details. It is passion. And this doesn't exist in many of the definitions in the literature, but a leader must have a passion. And I will again and again come to that word, and that is my end message. Finally, as a footnote also, before I start my presentation, a leader can be an evil man. It doesn't necessarily have to be good. There are bad leaders and there are good leaders. it is very, very important to be aware and avoid imposters. This is the outline of my presentation, defining a leader, who is a leader, and that passion I just mentioned. And I'll give you examples. I can cut some of these examples depending on my time. And finally, I will have some conclusion. And to answer the first question, who is a leader? A leader has someone who takes risks and is motivated, and he challenges the status quo. And finally, he makes sure he or his organization has the support and tools to achieve its goals. Now, this is from the literature. This is not my definition. This is not my invention. What really lacks, in my opinion, in all these definitions and explanations about leadership is the word passion, as I mentioned earlier. So I would add the leader has to have a passion for something. We have had many, many leaders in our history, individual leaders, and yet they were very, very passionate. In fact, in my opinion, Abu Nesairos is the most recent Oromo leader that the situation created. It is created. I know there was a discussion earlier, and I think it was Dr. Gamacho or somebody who said, we can train leaders. Of course we can train, but there is also an Oromo saying, Jagna Malkat Allah. The situation brings out the passion out of you. And I'll give you some examples of leaders who were born out of a situation, out of a need. What distinguishes the leader is or her ability to influence, motivate, and enable others to contribute to the organization's success. One can be, as I mentioned earlier, a good leader, or one can be a bad leader. A good leader has to have soft skills. That is what the literature says. But I added again a culmination of passion and determination, which must accompany those skills. What is a leader? Again, that passion comes to me. When what are those soft skills that a leader must have? One, teamwork. I think we have that abundantly. This, what we are doing now, is an expression of teamwork. We have over 25, 26 people gathered here, and Oromos are quite passionate about going and working as a team. I don't think we have a problem with that. The other soft skills of a leader, problem solving, communication, adaptability, critical thinking, time management. Don't even think that I inserted those things. Time management, they are all from the literature. And finally, leadership, I don't want to put that as a soft skill, because how can you explain leadership using leadership? So I don't want to put the 7th point, but the other 6 points are skills. Skills. Dhuguma, something you can be trained and learn. And though the first one I'm comfortable with, all the others I'm not comfortable with, meaning they are lacking or lagging. And the traits, these are not skills, but amala, the traits of a leader with a passion. One, the capacity to create or catch vision. This comes, out of discovering a major problem, a major project. Two, constructive spirit of discontent. I'll give you a few examples what I mean there. Leaders love improving. They don't accept and settle with the status quo. Example, Haile Mariam Gamada had a vision. They had by creating Majatulama, by envisioning, by refusing the status quo, he was a leader. But of course, that didn't go with risk management, which we can talk separately. Talk a lot about risk management, how we really didn't protect our leaders. So we were tortured and killed. A constructive spirit. We lack these often. For example, if somebody is not happy about the role of the OLF, look at this statement. I can put it. I don't like the OLF is doing, or I can express that a little more diplomatically. I can say, I really liked how you presented weaknesses of the Oromo struggle. The part about OLF's role was also solid. How do you think the observer will take this? Obviously, you are not appreciating the role of the OLF, but you are very kind, you are very polite, you are a leader. You are not criticizing for destruction, you are criticizing for construction. Akam, I noticed you missed your deadline to submit your presentation for this workshop 2 days ago. It may apply to me. Instead of saying you are too late, you are always late, and combative statement. This type of communication often lacks in our meetings, conferences, etc. Leaders always want to improve. If you want to have an example, I can mention how Obama passionately, determinedly improved the healthcare of this country. There was a question earlier. Is a leader born or is it trained and acquired? Remember, whether the leader is born or trained, there must be passion in him or in her. If the leader is only born, then we are doomed. We just have to sit down and wait for God to give us. But if it is trained, then we can train leaders. So I'm trying to answer these two questions at the end of my presentation. Fully passionate individuals. Recall, many of you know Rachel Carson, who wrote a book, which is still one of the most well-read books on Silent Spring. She documented environmental harm caused by pesticides. It was the first book written on the environment. She was passionate about protecting the environment. She was the first single voice. Now look where environmental problems are. In fact, all governments in all the world, all the countries talk about environmental issues that one lady, Rachel Carson, captured, and she put her passion behind it. And Susan Anthony on the 19th Amendment, she also started women's rights. Until then, remember, it was a given. Women have no right. They don't vote. They are not equal with, we take it for granted today. We only see how Orthodox Church Oromo discriminated against Oromos. And a few people started shaking that norm. That's what Susan Anthony did. And then what she started, her passion became at the beginning weird, wrong, but it became an amendment to the Constitution. How beautiful is that? So passionate women started movements that changed the law, passionately defied the conventional wisdom. And passionate individuals are results of their society. There was a question, I think somebody asked, in the forest of ardent needs, the passionate individual is a kanke. In fact, in Oromo, as I mentioned earlier, Jagna Malkat Ala, there are stories where Namni, a very cowardly person, all of a sudden became Jagna, hero, because he was cornered. So passionate individuals are also results of their society, but at times they also can born to the situation and think independently. Both Carson without environmental challenge, Anthony without gender inequality, they wouldn't have been there. The situation gave birth to the leaders. And where is passion in Oromo? Are we lifting the passionate individual? I want to leave this question to all of you, but first we have to believe in something, and then we have to be determined to support it. The passion comes at the end. I don't know the right word for passion, but jalala arra, that's how I interpreted it. So we have to add passion to our beliefs, to our determinations. I have seen a few leaders come up in the Oromo struggle. They were relentless. They had passion. Hirriba malee bulu. Are we helping positive passion? Are we encouraging the individual? I want to, everybody to ask himself or herself. So the weight of the passion, I'll give you a few examples of how an individual can be born to a situation and become a natural leader. In this example, I am giving you Croix-sur-Loire. I have presented about this young boy at one of the meetings at OSA. He was, this is 1144, very, very old story, but written in European books all over. Croix-sur-Loire wanted to capture Jerusalem from Jews and Muslims in those years. And there were so many wars that led to capturing Jerusalem between Jews and Christians, Muslims and Christians. But the shepherd boy named Stephen from France, Croix-sur-Loire, had a vision. He wanted to capture Jerusalem and bring it back to Christians. And at the age of, a boy at the age of a teenager, he mobilized not 5, not 10, but 30,000 children to march to Jerusalem and peacefully capture and bring it back to Christians. Imagine that. Definitely not trained, a shepherd boy. And there was no modern education, 12. He saw a vision and he had passion to do it. He led the 30,000 children and they went to Marseille. They took a ship. Unfortunately, none of them returned or reached Jerusalem. They all were sold as slaves to North Africa. But the leadership skill was there, albeit not well thought through. And there were stumbles on the road. Another boy, a 10-year-old boy from Cologne in Germany, Nicholas, did this about 10 years later. They went over the Alps and they never reached their destination nor came back to Germany. So these are, in my opinion, very young leaders, born leaders. They saw things that they can capture and make a difference. Another example is Joan of Arc, 1429. At the age of 17, imagine, a very, very young, not a boy, a girl. She told her uncle, she convinced him she was to have a military and be a leader of a military. And the uncle went and convinced, she convinced with her uncle, the commander, and the commander took her to the priest and she demanded she will see the dauphin. Dauphin is the prince, the main prince. And the prince took her to the king and she asked to be given an army. The king gave her an army in 5 minutes. And Joan of Arc, you might have seen a lot of movies. She terrorized her enemies. In fact, the discipline she introduced gave her more respect than what was in those days given to the male commanders. And at the age of 17, she discovered herself. She can be a leader, and she did. She was, I think, born a leader And there is another leader I want to mention as an example. This is in the spring of 74 BC. You see that hill on the right side. It's called Masada. It's in Israel. And the Romans encircled the Jews. And only that Masada, the ones, about 960 of them on the top of that hill were remaining. And when the Jews came, they all knew 960 of them will be sold as slaves. So Elazar ben Yair, he convinced 960 of them to commit suicide. And only 2 women were left out of 960 to tell the story. They were hiding before others were killed. How did Elazar ben Yair convince 960 people to commit suicide? He was a leader. People trusted him, and they gave their lives for an ideal that he introduced to them. And by the way, Mossad, the word comes from Masada, that is the hill. And you can also have creative leaders. Archimedes, I don't know if you see this physics, there is a mirror that reflects solar energy into a ship, and they all organized to reflect it at the same place. This test was repeated a few years ago at Syracuse and at one of the American universities, or Italian, I don't remember, but that's what you see on the left side. By concentrating mirrors, they burned the ships of the Romans. He was a creative leader, Archimedes. And we can have bad leaders too, but it depends on how we interpret what is bad. The Mongol ruler, for example, Genghis Khan, look at this map, almost the entire China, and he conquered Moscow in the 11th, 12th century. He conquered almost the entire Asia. He conquered by convincing people to give their lives to him. And in fact, they overstretched their win, and they eventually lost. But how did Genghis Khan convince his military to go so far away and die in mass and then conquer other countries? He was a unique leader. And then we can also have leaders that are really, they don't exist. Many of you may know, some of you at least in the US, who have read Rosie the Riveter. Rosie the Riveter didn't exist. The United States needed a hero during the Second World War because all the men were fighting. The country needed workers in the industry, and only women were left. Yeah. So they created this imaginary leader, and she convinced the country mobilized women by using this imaginary leader. And then, not far from my house in 97, this person convinced 30-something people to commit suicide because a comet was coming. They were all on the left side, you will see, properly dressed and lying down. How did he convince people to take a ride on a comet? I can give you more examples, but in the interest of time, I'll go to my conclusion. One doesn't exist without the other. Leadership needs organization. Organization needs a leader. Our organizational failures are due to lack of leadership. Our lack of leadership is due to diminished organizational capacity. It is a chicken and egg thing. We have failed to protect potential leaders. because we don't know the value of a leader. We have to refocus, redirect actions outward, and reorganize, respect political differences. The abolitionists, William Wilberforce, wants to eliminate slavery through peaceful struggle, as Martin Luther. John Brown believed in armed struggle. William Garrison employed rational and appeal to the public, like Mahatma Gandhi, but they didn't waste their time fighting each other. Have you noticed today, these days, Oromos are fighting on armed struggle, claiming, I am more for armed struggle. No, I am more for armed struggle. You are less supportive. I mean, anatu chala jallata, anatu chala jallata. I'm more Oromo than you, you are more Oromo than him. Just in that red area, we have created a split that doesn't favor the creation of leadership. Finally, leadership can be a natural gift, but also acquired trait. It can be trained. They are different. The leader is not necessarily a performer in the organization, just like the violinist will not necessarily make the best conductor. So leadership is born and leadership is also acquired. Are we giving birth to leaders? Are we training leaders?
Thank you very much. What a wonderful presentation, Professor Asfaw. Really some great examples, great stories to make your point. The passion, I think, if I have to sum up his presentation in one word, I think passion is the best word to sum it up. People with the vision, and they believe their vision, they become passionate. And that passion, you guys all know that passionate people are fearless. They are fearless. They're determined. They will challenge the status quo. They're not afraid to take risks. They're the ones that bring about change, and they do motivate others. Now we have the next 15 minutes to have Q&A. You guys can ask your questions or comments as welcome. Raise your hand, and then I'll call on you, and we'll go in that order. Raise your hand fast, because at the end, I'm not going to give you time if time runs out. We only have 15 minutes. Leaders are born. Oh, Dr. Dhuguma, you have it.
Sorry, Professor Asfaw, there is one statement you made that I have trouble getting the core message. When you say the organization, for leaders to emerge, organization is necessary, or vice versa. Is that correct? Am I quoting you correctly?
Yes, you have.
I am concerned, unless you give me good evidence to believe organization is critical to the emergence of a successful leader. Why should it be? Especially, I mean, leaders created organizations, that is for a fact. But how would the organization become a precondition for a leader to emerge?
I'll give it to Professor Asfaw to answer. I also have I have something to add, but I'll do it after.
By organization, in that sense, I meant an audience. You can't, in other words, if you are going to lead, there must be that thing that you are going to lead, and that, whether it is organized or not, I took it in a broader sense of organization. But the correct word probably should be an audience, a target audience. For example, the 960 on Mount Masada, whether they were organized or not, is a new political term, but they are the target. They are the ones who needed a leader, and the leader was leading the 960, or the victims of Rancho Santa Fe. They were not necessarily organized, but I took them as organization. So in a broad sense, anybody who is being led, whether organized or not, I took as an organization. Did I make sense?
Yeah, I think, yeah, to add to it also, on the same slide you had in a small font on the in the blue on the bottom, I saw, like, for example, there will not be no Susan B. Anthony if there is no woman suffering and things like that. That's the way I understood it.
Correct.
Is Dr. Bahiru satisfied with the answer?
Hey, I mean, the 50% of that equation is 100% correct. I mean, we all agree. Your own example, the guy who was able to persuade people to go and kill themselves, that is a classical leader for evil purpose in this case. He did not somehow emerge out of any existing organization, whether that is a community, target audience, or a specific structure that was created and functional. He started on his own and emerged as a leader, had a vision, whatever that vision was, able to convince everybody to have that vision and follow him and be willing to sacrifice anything to realize that vision. That is a classical, from my understanding of the way leadership is defined, that is a classical leadership quality. And you can see when we reflect back in our organization, we lack that in a big way, to say.
Thank you very much. I've seen several hands go up. I'm thinking they're going to contribute to this discussion. Dr. Dempsey first, and then I'll call on the rest.
Nice presentation, Dr. Asfaw. I have few comments and then one question. So yes, leaders are born as well as made, as you rightly said. But the concept that leaders are born is getting archaic. I mean, it's not much accepted by many scholars in the field. But nonetheless, that still works. In a sense, leaders need to have very key traits, like we may say they have to be intelligent, they have to have self-confidence, determination, integrity, sociability, emotional intelligence, and so on. These are some of the traits that we need to have in leaders. But again, skills, particularly leaders' capabilities, are very important in terms of technical skills that you just mentioned, human skills, conceptual skills, which are very important. Not only this, but also behaviorally, they may be categorized as leaders who are with task behaviors, who want to see, want to give more precedence to task. And there are also relationship behaviors who, in most cases, want to build relations. In fact, focusing on the goals. So combining all these is where we see a good leader. And always 4 terminologies, like 5 terminologies are there when we see a leader. The process, the interaction between leader and follower, as well as the person who is leading, that leader influence. Without influence, we don't have leader. So a leader who doesn't influence the group in a positive way, we cannot call, a leader. So there has to be a group, constituents, as well as there should be a common goal. So that all package make what we call leaders, leadership. So leaders are then, they have these key traits as well as these key skills that we could develop through training and so on. So Dr. Asfaw said it's a chicken and egg kind of puzzle. Without leader, we don't have organization. Without organization, no leader. But I do, a little away from this, because as long as we have a good leader, there is a best organization. Sometimes, because the leader, everything that we see in failures of many organizations comes from lack of the right leaders, and that should be underlined. And I'm a bit different from that conclusion. It's not a chicken and egg puzzle, but it's the leader who makes the organization.
Before Dr. Asfaw answers that one, I will give it to Dr. Dhuguma to make his comments. And because we ran out of time, we want to hear from everybody that's raising their hand. And after Dr. Dhuguma, Dr. Hambisa continue, and then Dr. Asfaw can respond at the end.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tisho again. Yeah, I'm really very much impressed by Professor Asfaw's presentation. An engineer, actually going deep into ancient history, medieval history, bringing examples on leadership. So that's very amazing. I appreciate that. Having said that, I think some of the examples of the leaders that he cited from history, yes, it's very, very, they are outstanding in terms of mobilization. But unfortunately, actually, in executing the mission and achieving the goal that they have set, or they have mobilized their followers, they miserably failed. So my point is, yes, mobilizing, the ability to mobilize is a leadership quality, but doesn't leadership also require not only mobilizing, but achieving the goal and the ability to adjust? I think that's one of the terms that Dr. Abu said earlier, to adjust, to adapt to the situation, and to overcome problems that come along in the process of the struggle, and leading that group to success ultimately. Of course, not all leaders who mobilize or who lead succeed in their lifetime. Sometimes they just don't have the luck, or just they don't have the time. They are just human beings. Probably the goal may not be achieved in one person's lifetime, but ultimately, if we succeed, it's their contribution. So my question is, doesn't also require adjusting to the situation that comes along in the process of the struggle and leading to the ultimate goal? Because the examples you used, none of them, or most of them actually didn't succeed in achieving their goals. On the question of leaders born or created, you said both. I agree with you. That's true. But one other thing I think maybe needs to be included is leaders are born of context, not born of the situation. Not only biological, but also a circumstance, the situation, the environment in which they find themselves, whatever it is, whether it's the struggle for better environment or political, military leadership. Leaders come out of that situation. The context creates sometimes leaders, or they are born out of that. The example used, Joan of Arc, the French history, she came out of the context that the French found themselves after years of struggle and fighting against their rivals, their enemy. And so that context actually created her. We can find many other examples from other societies as well. So that context is very important. Susan B. Anthony in the American women's rights movement you cited, yes, she came out, but women have been oppressed for centuries before her rise to leadership.
Thank you.
In this case, in the American society, but in the Western society. So we have to look at for the rise of people like Susan Anthony. We have to look at the political, social context of 19th century.
Thank you very much.
American society. So
thank you very much,
I
Dr.
just wanted to add that. But thank you.
Yeah, those are great additions. Also, I know Dr. Asfaw is taking notes. I will have Dr. Ambisa ask his last final question, and then I'll let Dr. Asfaw comment.
Galatoma, the issue that was raised about leadership and organization, I don't know, I was thinking in the terms of leadership and institution. So maybe Dr. Asfaw and others could comment on it. So the relationship between leadership and followership, because the quality of the leadership is impacted by the quality of the followership. It's not, I'm not talking about the fixed set, but it is something like, you know, Majid Dr. Haile Neneka etadaraje etataka hizb yashannifal abbatu eggata leadership is anasi the society must keep, the society must raise, the society must keep them in the right path. Also about institutions, what would be the kind of leadership we would have in the US without the US institutions? The constitution, the division of governments, the mature journal, or what do you call the media system we have, all those things. Those are institutions.
Thank you, Dr. Asfaw. Please take a few minutes or a couple of minutes to comment on from Dr. Damise, Dr. Dhuguma, and Dr. Ambisa raised great point.
I will be very brief. This relationship between leader and an organization has come repeatedly, and it was started by Dr. Bahiru. What I'm saying is a leader has to lead. Then if he or she has to lead, what is that he or she is going leading? A leader cannot just be a leader alone. Whether that organization is created by him or he or she inherits that organization, that mass follower, those two are, in my opinion, inseparable. Again, I'm not saying the leader has to inherit. He or she can create a follower or an organization, but the two are inseparable. If there is no organization, the leader will only be a leader of one person, and we are all that person, guaranteed. if there are organizations, then they may produce a good leader. That's what I meant in, I used the word chicken and egg, going to Dr. Damise's comments. I fully agree with what he said, but I did notice he had an issue with chicken and egg. That is in that sense, not as in terms of a birth, but they need each other. One cannot live without the other. So that's what I meant. Yes, a leader can be the egg. In fact, my conclusions asserts that a leader can be born, but born to, as Dhuguma said, a context. He used the word context. And I used, in fact, an Oromo saying, Jagna Malkat Ala. That Malka represents that context that Dhuguma mentioned. So I want to, again, the chicken and an egg, I honor Dr. Damise's thing, because I seem to contradict my own assertion that a leader can be born. Yes, in that sense, but in terms of existence, they need each other. It's a cycle of feeding each other. Dhuguma mentioned, all the examples I mentioned failed. They didn't all fail. In fact, some of the women's rights became a constitution of the country, and the environmental movement still is there. But at the very beginning, I mentioned that a leader need not be a good person, and we have to be very careful from imposter leaders that are bad. Hitler was a leader. People followed him. He didn't succeed. Yeah, he was a bad person, an evil person. Yeah, but he was a leader because he mobilized. So my definition of a leader is independent of the outcome. Okay, Dr. Dhuguma, I respectfully respect if you disagree, but a leader for me is independent of the outcome. In fact, the leader may start halfway, he can be sacrificed, he may be killed, but he still was and is a leader. In fact, I mentioned, I gave an example of the reverter, an imaginary leader that the US government created for women to rally behind. So leaders can be created even imaginarily. She didn't exist in reality. She was just a picture. And that's, there was a context and engineered the leader. So that is, just to save time, I agree with Dr. Hambisa, and actually I agree with everybody. Now that Dr. Bahiru raised his hand by mistake, we have to wait and see what he has to say.
I don't think I'll give him time to, unless it's his house is burning down.
Very quick comment. First of all, my belated big thank you to Professor Asfaw. You really did incredible justice, which I did not mention. I'm so sorry. No, Asfaw, I think I'm beginning to get insight into where you come from. I think if you were just talking about somebody who calls himself a leader, yes, what we are saying is correct. But if we put that qualification to successful leadership, probably then we're talking about a different leader or leadership qualities, traits, and what have you. So I'll dive into that when I give my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I love the fact that these discussions are coming up and we're actually cutting them short, because one, we will have some time at the end and tomorrow at the end to discuss a little more in depth of these things. And also, I hope this conversations continue beyond these two webinar days. now, the next presenter, I've known this person for many years. In fact, I've spent several winter holidays in his home in Utah. He attended Haromaya University with my mom, and then we both went to the same school at Utah State University. That's the school that he completed his doctoral studies. And we were Aggies together, albeit at different times. He will talk to us about one of the most important concepts of being a leader is self-awareness. And Dr. Haile will help us unpack that. Dr. Haile is an adult education expert specializing in civil rights, employment, laws, and practices. He's a lifelong learner and a teacher of adult education, focusing on advanced placement educational systems. Dr. Haile served as trade school administrator, vocational high school agriculture instructor, sales fund manager, extension supervisor, World Bank project manager, job course vocational school instructor, job course college coordinator, Department of Labor compliance officer, Department of Labor district director, and commercial capital leadership consultant. Dr. Haile has been an active member of and contributor to the Oromo diaspora community organizations, including but not limited to OSA, where he once served as a chairperson. It's my pleasure to invite Dr. Haile to the microphone. The floor is yours, and you have precisely 25 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I thank the audience at the same time. My topic of discussion today is about self-awareness. Self-awareness in kuni of baru yookiin immoo of beeku kan jedhudha. And I would like to start with the definition of self-awareness. And the self-awareness is a conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and the desires. All these things are included in self-awareness. And then the self-awareness is the ability to focus on ourselves, on how our actions come about our thoughts, about our emotions, which will align or which will not align with our internal standards. Sometimes we fight with those internal standards. For self-awareness, the most important core of the value is our internal standard, which are sometimes defined and sometimes not. Self-awareness must account for one, what others say or think about us, or how we think and feel about ourselves and who we really are and whom we want to be in the future. And these are the characters that we have in ourselves, but out of the four factors that I mentioned here, who we really are is the most important, because most of the time, the problems that we face and we come across is when we do not know ourselves, who we really are. And in the self-awareness area, animals, for example, use self-awareness not to eat their own species, most of them. When they are aware of themselves, then they don't eat their species, most of them. There are some animals who eat their own infants, but self-consciousness helps these creatures. And self-awareness has four dimensions. Awareness of what others say and think about us, awareness of thoughts and the feeling we have about ourselves, awareness of who we really are, awareness of who we want to become. And this is mainly the area of definition that we are going to deal with in case of self. And if you look at this picture is about self-concept. When we start thinking about self-awareness, look at the first picture where a lady is looking at her own self-image. We go to the mirror and we see our face, and that is the self-image, what we see in the mirror. And then the other part of us is the ideal self. If you look at the two pictures in the middle, you see a lady in uniform who is ready to work, and that is the ideal self that we see in people. And then out of the self-concept, you see the third picture where self-esteem is taking place. If you look at the lady, she has a better self-esteem. But if you look at the African-American boy person, you can see how his self-esteem is, because he has already started holding his hands. And this is the way we see it. And then when we look at self-awareness, we have two categories of self-awareness. One is internal self-awareness, where we deal with our own values, our passion, our aspiration, and how we fit into the environment. And then the second part is external self-awareness. That is, on the other hand, the ability to see how others view us. And people know how others see us as a typical example. And the leaders who have their employees view them are usually more effective and stronger. They have a stronger relationship because they see how their self-awareness is. And can we improve on our self-awareness? Yes, we do. And there are methods how people usually improve their self-awareness. One is by meditation. Sometimes people, when certain concept comes to their mind, they either go to their room or private place, meditate about the concept that is coming to their mind, or people use journalism. They write down what happens to them, what happens to the environment, what happens to their area, what happens to people who live or the event they come into. They write down those events, and wherever change needs, they go and change through journalism. Or people can go and they talk to people they know, would be their medical doctor or would be their pastor, or someone they know. They go and talk to other people and get some recommendation, and through that they can improve their self-awareness. And of course, the biggest method of self-awareness is developing emotional intelligence. And then, how do you know if you are self-aware? If you really understand you are aware of yourself, how do you know? There are examples given. Self-aware individuals control his or her emotions using a positive outcome of self-awareness. And and being able to focus on something positive when they are in negative situation. Being able to recognize bad habits and effect it can have on them. And at the same time, they learn about emotional triggers. What will bring up emotional trigger? What makes them mad? What makes them angry? What makes them use bad words or certain ideas that could affect their future decisions? And then some of the psychologists have defined self-awareness, and some of the best known self-awareness definition is ability to focus on yourself and how your actions, thoughts, and emotions do or do not align with your internal standard. If you are high self-aware, you can objectively evaluate yourself. Your evaluation is possible, but it will be objective evaluation. And self-aware people can interpret their action, their feelings, and their thoughts objectively. In a rare case, emotionally driven interpretation or circumstances could lead to different situations, and developing self-awareness is important because it allows leaders to assess their growth and effectiveness and change course when necessary. It will help them to have practical. Okay, then the other state, there are two states of awareness. One is public self-awareness, and the other is private self-awareness. When it is public, we tend to deal with what others say and how we can adjust ourselves in the social norm, and which makes us behave the way that our society is accepting us. While the benefit of this type of awareness is good, sometimes it has also a danger, because it can lead us into self-consciousness, and we might not be able to move forward. In the area of private self-awareness, then this is our internal state, and we have to, again, be careful. Otherwise, self-conscious people might be reluctant to accept themselves. And because of that, we might get out of reality, and we might not accept the personal, the right judgment. And then there are several benefits of self-awareness. Self-awareness has a lot of benefits because it gives us how to influence outcome. When we are self-aware, we do influence of what will come in the future. It helps us also become better decision makers. It gives us more self-confidence, and when those things happen, we communicate with clarity and intention. It allows us to understand things from multiple perspectives. We don't only judge issues by looking at one face of the coin. We tend to look at both sides. It frees us from our assumption and biases, because our judgment becomes objective judgment. It helps us to build better relationships, and it gives us greater ability to regulate our emotions that could easily lead us to make judgments. And when we do those kind of things, it will decrease stress, and at the end of the day, we'll make the right decision and we become happier. Then studies have been conducted about the self-awareness gap in the society. Research have been done, and it is only 10 to 15% of the population who feel or who really understand themselves and who have self-awareness. And I think that is one of the problems that we run into when we try to use the definition of self-awareness or about the leadership, about organization, and about all these issues, because in reality, in the society we have, it's only 10 to 15% who are aware. And research have been done in several areas by several psychologists, and because of this situation, we have to be aware, or we need to know that self-aware people are limited in every society. It's not only our society or other people. Positive outcomes of self-awareness. One is growth mindset. When we have self-awareness, we always have the mind of growth. We will look at the future, and we have always room for growth. We don't fix ourselves in one place, and we keep on going. And then the other outcome is, as I mentioned earlier, is there is a self-confidence, because we know what we are looking for, what we are intending to do, and we are going forward with optimism, and our future is brighter, because we know what is going to trigger us either in a positive or a negative way, and this keeps us in a situation of self-confidence. There are 4 common characters. Once we understand about this self-awareness issue, how do we see in the situation of our country, for example, about colonialism? There are characters, because we are dealing with characters, and in colonialism, the colonialism character is political and legal domination over the alien society or the conquered society, relationship of economic and political dependence. There is economical dependence that is included, exploitation between imperial power and the colony, and racial and cultural inequality. These are the major, these are not only characters that are in colonialism, but these are the 4 major characters that we see in colonialism, what colonialism does on colonized people. And colonizers impose on their subjects their religion, their language, the economic situation, and also cultural practices. Why do colonizers destroy the self-awareness of colonized people? One is to dehumanize the colonized people. They make them, the colonized people are not human beings, so that they can go on and do whatever they like to them. When slavery was going on, the slave people, they were dehumanized and became subhuman, so that the colonizers could sell the slaves, and then the humanized people become objects and become submissive to their masters. When this happens, the colonized group, Galtus and the Gantus, increase by day. Now these people are, when this situation happens, when they become subhuman, in order to fight that inferiority complex, the colonized people, usually their number of Gantus, the Galtus and the Gantus increase, I said. And one example is when there was a time when a slave person was sick and taken to the doctor for treatment. When the doctor asked the slave, where can I treat you, or how can I treat you? The slave person turned around and said, whatever my master said. If my master says, if I have a pain in my leg, and if my master says, get treated on your arm, I will be treated on my arm, like something like that. In Oromo, they say, Esa si kopu jennan, lafa goftan ko jedhani. And this is what happened in most of our situation. And what is the correlation between world and Ethiopian colonizers? There is no difference between the world colonizers and Ethiopian colonizers. The difference is just difference of white people colonizing black people. And in fact, there was a person who was witnessing about what was going on in the case of the northern part of Ethiopia, where the rulers were referring to colonized people as Kaigala and Ushankila. No matter what their face looked like, whether if they are Oromos, they call them the Kaigala, and if they are not Oromos, they call them the Kushankila. And that is how...
You have exactly 3 minutes.
Okay. The only colonial empire existing in the world today is Ethiopian empire. And since all the empires have died, it must go too. Okay. That's okay. Are there self-aware Oromos? Yeah, there have been self-aware Oromos, but in the case of Oromos also, the percentage is close to 10 to 15% because it follows a human trend. Oromos who became aware, they got organized, initiated the Oromo struggle, which led to this inspiration of Oromoma, and currently Sabonuma is flourishing in the Oromo forest. And what do we need going forward? Oromos must be aware of themselves. Oromos must focus on liberation, education, and focus on self-awareness. Oromo's struggle is on the right track, but there is a long journey ahead of us. Those who are aware of themselves and those can get organized and lead the Oromo struggle to the final victory of emancipation. And for those of you who would like to get self-assessment, there are two tools that you can use. You can go and take a self-assessment at www.123test.com, or you can go to my DIC profile.com, and these websites are free. And if you want to see your level of self-awareness, you can go to these websites and verify how aware you are about yourself, and how you will be able to use self-awareness tools to improve your future relationship, or how you organize leaders, or how you can lead different organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Haile. Wonderful presentation. I was pleasantly surprised how you tied in, that's my son. I like how you tied in self-awareness into the Oromo struggle. I didn't see that coming. I have a question for the people in this audience. One of the ways to improve, a couple of the ways to improve self-awareness is meditation and journaling. How many of you do meditation and journaling? You don't have to answer it, but I'm really curious to know that. Maybe you can tell us why you come on the mic for where you question and comments. I would like to give the chance to the people who hasn't talked. Dr. Mokria, thank you for raising your hand. And then I'll warn you again. I'll give you 2 minutes each. If you go over 2 minutes, I will mute you and call a different person. Dr. Mokria, go first, and then Dr. Nargos, and then Dr. Demse. Mokria, if you...
Thank you very much. While it is an interesting topic, it is something all of us may have thought over or thought about. But my question is, why are some people self-aware and why others are not? What is the source of self-awareness? Is that natural? Is that something we learn? Where does it originate? That is my question, Dr. Haile.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haile. Just take notes, and we'll take one from Dr. Nardos, and we'll continue.
Okay, thank you, Tisho. So mine are maybe comments, but also maybe food for thought. So my first comment is like, so I think I find this really interesting from personal point of view and also leadership. So tying this to leadership, I think self-awareness is very important. It's a very important aspect of effective leadership. And I think one thing a leader should do is practice asking for feedback from those he or she is leading, or at least from a trusted group of people. Because sometimes there could be a disconnect how we see things and how others perceive like our leadership. And I think maybe this is something, it's a good practice. So how do the people that I'm leading see me? Have I lost my luster? So I think this is part of also self-awareness, because like the point is to be self-aware and to have this growth mindset and to improve. So I think the practice of asking feedback, and I think it's very, very important to grow as a leader. And another aspect is like part of self-awareness is also seeing the greatness in others and how they can complement what we are lacking as leader, or what the leader is lacking. And I think a leader cannot sail solo and must have a team who keep the leader honest, so that, you know, that self-awareness is also growing. So I think I just want to make those 2 points. Like a leader cannot be solo. So I think a leader should have a team who keep the leader very honest and give honest feedback. And the leader should receive this feedback and improve. And one more thing. So another aspect of self-awareness for a leader, and I think, is knowing when to step down and pass the baton. And I think this is very uncommon in Africa, where, you know, leadership is timeless, or it's, you know, it has no time limit. So, and as people, or as, you know, how do we hold our leaders accountable when they fail to do that? Because sometimes there could be a time component to this leadership, and a leader should know. If a leader is self-aware, I think they will know when to step down and say, okay, you know, this next person can do this better than me, and I should pass the baton. So I just wanted to make those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nardos. I kind of like how things are tying into each other, things of growth mindset and developing future leaders and things of that sort. Please, Dr. Dempsey, next.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Haile, for that very nice presentation. I have just one question. I mean, in one of your slides, it says data shows 10 to 15% of Oromo people, I'm not sure, maybe are self-aware, whereas nearly 90 to 85% are not. And then, I mean, this is devastating. I mean, the way I understand it is a bit different, especially the Kube and the Keroka generation. I'm considering them as self-aware, whereas the data speaks a different findings, especially the curriculum is really, I mean, it is shaping this young generation. So where does that finding and research comes? And just if you tip us, I mean, thank you.
Thank you. Let's take one more, Dr. Haile, before you respond. Let's take it from Dr. Gamachu, and then you respond collectively. Interesting questions coming up in comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tisho. Dr. Haile, thank you for your presentation. My question is, the self-awareness sometimes confused or interpreted with the racism, like the Oromo, when the self-awareness of Oromuma is interpreted as if they are isolating the others. Well, how do you see the relation between self-awareness and racism? Thank you.
Only is a great question. I like how precisely you asked that question, and that's the practice that I hope all of us will, not just for this presentation, but for the future. Thank you. Dr. Haile, respond, and then we'll give it to Dr. Hambisa for next round of questions.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Dr. Makuria, baay'ee fayyaa ta'e, self-awareness in natural damo kan baratanidha kan jette. Self-awareness in kuni keessumaa kan keenya kan Oromoodha. Oromoo akka hin taaneetii fi diinatu nurratti hojjechaa ture keessumaa waggaa 150. Kanaafi Oromoon akka inni aadaa qabu, akka inni amantii qabu, akka inni biyya qabu, akka inni nama ta'e, akka inni resources hundumaa akka inni qabu wal dhaalchisaniitu ati homaan beektu, ati doofaadha, ati garba, ati namaa gadi jedhanii isa inni ittiin dhalate internal self-awareness isa namni tokko yeroo eega dhalate kaasee qabu akka inni isa developing gooneetii fi akka inni nama jalatti gadi galee ani nama jedhe akka inni hin adeemne yaadattu yoo taatan bara Haile Sillaasee keessa uffata gaafa facaasaa treat show kan jedhamutu jira. Treat show sana keessatti Oromooni uffata qulqulluu uffatee hin dhiyaatu. Oromooni gogaattuu isaniitu dhiyeessu turan. Yeroo warra Habashaa dhufan garuu wayyaa bareedaatti uwwisanii maal fakkeessaniitu wal bukkee qabanii agarsiisu. Kanaatiif namni dhaqeessa taa'ee ijoolleen akkan isa ilaalanii ba'anii achi yeroo gadi ba'anii ani Itoophiyaadha jedhu malee ani Oromoodha ofiin hin jedhan. Akka isaan ani Habashaadha akka isaan ofiin jedhani akka isaan garbummaa isaanii sanatti akka isaan amananii fi namaa gadi gochaa turan. Isa kanatu self awareness sana nu keessatti ajjeesaa akka inni gadi qabamu gochaa ture. Inni kun amma ol ka'aa jiraa jedhee isinitti jira. Namoonni xinnoon yartuu ta'aniin jalqabee yeroo qabsoon Oromoodhaa yookiin kaayyoon Oromoodhaa hundeeffamu kaasee barachaa jira namni keenya karaa adda addaadhaa ol adeemaa jira waan kun. Kanaaf waan isaa dubbiin self awareness kuni it is not waa'ee naturally jiraataadhaa fi immoo baramaa isaa duwwaa kan ta'ini isa nu keessa jiru sanatti self awareness dhugaa nu keessa jiru sanatti nu keessatti ajjeesaa turanii. Kanaatiif isa kana deebifnee iddootti qabachuutu nurra jira kan jedhudha. Inni gara biraan namoonni keessumaa kan keenya Oromoon self aware ta'anii yaada isaan wal duukaa fudhatanii ka'anii gar tokkotti luucca. Yeroo waa'ee isaanii sirriitti barame yeroo waa'ee isaanii warri sirriitti baranii ka'an kuni yaada isaanii tokko ta'etu waan tokko irratti qabsoo godhu jechuudha. Kanaatiif hojii isaan hojjetan suni yookiin immoo gara fuula duraatti waan isaan deeman suni wal fakkaachuutti deebi'aa jechuudha. Waan Naardos jette fiidbaakii argachuun baay'ee barbaachisaadha. Fiidbaakii sana yeroo kan argachuu dandeenyu immoo namoonni self aware kan ta'an Oromoonni akkamittiin jiru self aware yoo ta'an liideri isaanii waan akka gurmaanitti akka organizii ta'anitti hojii hojjetan irratti hojii bobba'an irratti fuula duratti adeemuu hin danda'u. Amma har'a fudhadhaa fakkeenyaaf woboo keessa kan jiranii akka dhageenyutti akka ilaalaa jirrutti baay'een isaanii maroonii dura buutuu wobooti isatu geggeessaa jiranii kan duukaa bu'anii har'a lola gubbaa jiran jiru. Isaan kana keessaati yeroo ammaatti eenyutu dhuguma yaada nama tokko duukaa luucca'ee self aware ta'ee hojii kana gubbaa hojjechaa jiraaf hin jiru. Garaagara baafnee hubachuudhaatii fi baay'ee rakkisaadha. Maaliif biyya keenya keessatti har'a riseerchii hojjechuu dhiisaatii information ammayyuu argachuun baay'ee rakkisaa waan ta'eef fiidbaakii sana argachuun isaa rakkisaa baay'ee cimaadha. Garuu hojii isaan hojjechaa jiran irratti utuu beela'anii utuu madaa'anii deemanii hojii isaanii kenname sana hojjechaa jiraachuun isaanii fiidbaakii bakkeedha ilaalaa jirudha malee keessa seenamee dhaqamee fiidbaakii sana argachuu hin danda'amne. Ammaa fi garuu gara fuulduraatti baay'ee barbaachisaadha. Duukaa bu'umsa nu barbaachisa. Egaa kun karaa fiidbaakiidha kan dhufuudha. Kanatti aanee warri liidaroonni yoom akka isaan waan itti kenname dhiisanii kan isaan barbaachisutti yoom darbu isa jedhuutiif yoo self consciousness keenya kun self awareness kun ol ka'ee jedhee gara gadaa siistemiitti deebinaa. Gara gadaa siistemiitti deebinee jennaani term limitiin liidaroota keenyaadha waggaama 8 ta'a jechuudha. One term 8 years yoo deebine or for that matter could be only 5 years one term ta'uu hin danda'a. Gaafa self aware taanee mootummaa mataa keenya arganne gara sanatti deebi'uun baay'ee rakkinaan qabu. Garuu nuyi kanarratti fookasii goonee like minded people yookiin immoo namoota waa'ee ofummaa isaanii warra oromummaa isaanii warra baran kuni qabsoo kana gara fuula duraatti adeemsisuu jalqabanii jennaan isa kana bira ga'uudhaaf baay'ee nu rakkisuu kan jedhu yaada qaba.
Please make it a little more concise, Dr. Haile, but continue.
Okay, isa Dr. Damiseni percentage kudhanin kudha shan jedhu sana data nama qeerroo irratti funaanamee data kana baasin jiru garuu linkii sasni kenne sanaatiin deemtanii yoo gaaffii iddoo tokko tokkotti gaaffii 48 jira gaaffii 48 sana deebiftanii gaaffii sana keessaatii hammam akkasin argattan percentii sakam keessa akkasin jirtanii garaagara baasee isinitti himaa ilaaluu hin dandeessu namoonni dadna keessa jirtan iyyuu kana fudhachuu hin dandeessu teestii kana fudhachuu hin dandeessu jechuudha malee isaatii qeerroo irratti warri qeerroodhaa self awareedhaa kan jedhu suni kan teestii ta'ee baay'ee hin jiru ammaatii fi gara fuula duraatti garuu ilaaluu hin danda'amu warri bakkee jiru garuu tuuliin isinii kenne sanatti dhimma ba'aatii hammam akka self aware taatan dhaqanii ilaaluu dandeessu. Kan obbo Gammachuun jedhee racismidha moo self awareness kan inni jedhu suni inni racism irra kan nurratti hojjechaa jiru. Taani liideri isaanii duukaa waan akka gurmaanitti akka organizii ta'anitti hojii hojjetan irratti hojii bobba'an irratti fuula duratti adeemuu hin danda'u. Amma har'a fudhadhaa fakkeenyaaf woboo keessa kan jiranii akka dhageenyutti akka ilaalaa jirrutti baay'een isaanii maroonii dura buutuu wobooti isatu geggeessaa jiranii kan duukaa bu'anii har'a lola gubbaa jiran jiru. Innaa isaan kana keessaati yeroo ammaatti eenyutu dhuguma yaada nama tokko duukaa luucca'ee self aware ta'ee hojii kana gubbaa hojjechaa jiraaf hin jiru garaagara baafnee hubachuudhaatii fi baay'ee rakkisaadha maaliif biyya keenya keessatti har'a research hojjechuu dhiisaatii information emayyuu argachuun baay'ee rakkisaa waan ta'eef feedback isin argachuu isaa rakkisaa baay'ee cimaadha garuu hojii isaan hojjechaa jiran irratti utuu beela'anii utuu madaa'anii deemanii hojii isaanii kenname sana hojjechaa jiraachuun isaanii feedback bakkeedha ilaalaa jirudha malee keessa seenamee dhaqamee feedback sana argachuu hin danda'amne ammaa fi garuu gara fuulduraatti baay'ee barbaachisaadha duukaa bu'umsa nu barbaachisaa egaa kun karaa feedbackidha kan dhufuudha. Kanatti aanee warri liidaroonni yoom akka isaan waan itti kenname dhiisanii kan isaan barbaachisutti yoom darbu jedhuutii fi yoo self consciousness keenya kun self awareness kun ol ka'ee jedhee gara gadaa sistemiitti deebina gara gadaa sistemiitti deebinee jennaani term limitiin liidaroota keenyaadha waggaa 8 ta'aa jechuudha one term 8 years itti yoo deebine or for that matter could be only 5 years one term ta'uu hin danda'a gaafa self aware taanee mootummaa mataa keenya arganne gara sanatti deebi'uuni baay'ee rakkinan qabu garuu nuyi kanarratti fookasii goonee like minded people yookiin immoo namoota waa'ee ofummaa isaanii warra oromummaa isaanii warra baran kuni qabsoo kana gara fuulduraatti adeemsisuu jalqabanii jennaan isa kana bira ga'uudhaati baay'ee nu rakkisuu kan jedhu yaada qabaa.
Please make it a little more concise, Dr. Haile, but continue.
Okay, isa Dr. Damiseni percentage kudhanin kudha shan jedhu sana data nama qeerroo irratti funaanamee data kana baasin jiru garuu linkii sasni kenne sanaatiin deemtanii yoo gaaffii iddoo tokko tokkotti gaaffii 48 jira. Gaaffii 48 sana deebiftanii gaaffii sana keessaatii hammam akkasin argattan persentii sakam keessa akkasin jirtanii garaagara baasee isinitti himaa ilaaluu hin dandeessu. Namoonni na keessa jirtan iyyuu kana fudhachuu hin dandeessu. Teestii kana fudhachuu hin dandeessu jechuudha. Malee isaatii qeeroo irratti warri qeeroodhaa self awareedhaa kan jedhu suni kan teestii ta'ee baay'ee hin jiru ammaatii fi gara fuulduraatti garuu ilaaluu hin danda'amu. Warri bakkee jiru garuu tuuliin isinii kenne sanatti dhimma ba'aatii hammam akka self aware taatan ilaaluu dandeessu. Kan obbo Gammachuun jedhee racismii dha self awareness kan inni jedhu suni inni racismii kan irratti hojjechaa jiru warra Bashaati, warra diina keenyaati. Self awareness waa'ee keenya ofii keenya of baruudha. Waa'ee keenya of baruudha. Isaan garuu akka nuyi ofii keenyaaf akka of hin barreetii fi yoo of barree kaanee falmannaa kaayyoo keenya duukaa buunaa oromummaan sabboonummaatti jijjiirameetu diinni keenya akka taane baruu dandeenya jechuudha. Isaantu akka yeroo nuyi ofii keenyaaf of barre yeroo jennu waan keenyaan dubbannu yeroo jennu aadaa keenya guddifnu yeroo jennu biyya keenya risoorsii keenyatti abbaa taana yeroo jennu yoo kana hin taatanii akkas iddoo sana hin geenyeetiif immoo nuyi isinii maqaa balleessinee reesistiidha isiniin jennee warra gosaati isiniin jenneetu maqaa isin balleessinee akkas walitti dhufnee akkas ofii keessa of hin barre isin goona jedhaniitu nurratti hojjechaa jiru malee self aware ta'uun ofii baruudha. Waa Waaqayyo ittiin si uumee si kaa'ee ofii kee baruudha malee waa'ee nama jibbuudhaa miti. Waa'ee reesizimii yookiin immoo waa'ee qomoodhaan daddaboo miti dubbiinsaa. Kan akka kanaatti akka fudhannu maaliif akka nuyi self aware hin taaneetiif diinni nurratti hojjechaa jira jechuudha.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haile. I appreciate it. Next, Dr. Hambisa and Zell, you guys have 1 minute each. And then if there's a response needed, Dr. Haile, please respond to each one of them with 2 to 3 words. Words, not sentences. Go ahead, Dr. Hambisa.
Ani gaaffisa hunduma keenyaaf utuu ta'ee fudhannee galle jedhee yaada. Sila Naardos kan isheen gaafatte have I lost my luster jennee of gaafannu kan jedhu gaaffee turte. Ani immoo gaaffii nan qabu I think colonialism kun waa lama nurratti godhe. Tokkoffaa isa nuyi qabnu sanayyuu nu dhabsiise. Lammaffaa immoo kan dalgaa kan isaanii isa dalga ta'e immoo nu barsiise. Kanaaf waa'ee leadership keenya waa'ee mataa keenya yeroo yaannu it's not really style keenya kan keenyatu bitaa jira miti. Kanaaf probably eessatti safe space bannee namni tokko sodaa malee yaada isaa akka inni ibsatu akka inni dhokate sun akka ba'u gochuu danda'ama isa jedhu gaaffiin koo fayyaa ta'a.
Zell?
Okay, galatoomii Tisho. An kollega babaadha. Dr. Haile fayyaa ta'e presentation bareedaa ture. Waa'ee self awareness ana kan kaafnee fi hooggansa hojii walitti hidhameef namni ofiisaa beeku hooggansa gaarii kennuu danda'a isa jedhamurraati. Hooggansa kennuun immoo of beekuu ofuma ofii isa introspectioniidhumaan of beekuu qofaatu hin ta'in akkatti namni alaa nama ilaalus beekuu barbaada waansaa natti fakkaata. Yoo ofii keenya introspectioniidhumaan waa'ee keenyaa barree self awareedha jenne hammam namoota geggeessuuf nu gargaara laata. Namoota geggeessuuf akka isaan itti nu ilaalanis namoota geggeessuu jechuun obviously wanni jechaa jirru kaayyoo tokko irratti namoota hojjechii wajjin hojjennu qabna. Ilaalcha tokko qabna asirratti hojjennee waan sana bakkaan geenya jennee deemna yoo ta'e isaaniin geggeessina yoo ta'e akka isaan itti nu ilaalanis barbaachisaadha. Eessa laa baalansiinsaa akka nuti itti of ilaalluu fi akkatti warri nuyi geggeessuu yaallu kun nu ilaalan gidduu eessa laa baalansiinsaa yeroo hundumaa walirraa completely overlapping godhuufan jedhe yeroo tokko tokko. Dr. Haile qofaaf miti hundumaaf iyyuu waan irratti reflectii gochuu qabnu natti fakkaata fayyaa ta'e.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haile. Two words for each if you have any response to that.
Dr. Ambisaan illee koomentiidha kan inni kenne fayyaa ta'e gaasa irratti hojjenna. Inni Zalaalam jedhe baadaan siisaa kan keenya gara negatiivitti jijjiiran. Isaan kan keenya gara negatiivitti jijjiiran sana kan keenya sana positiivitti fudhachuun irra jira. Kan diinni immoo isa kan keenya balleessee gadheedha jedhe sana immoo akka inni gadhee hin taane sana deebifnee barsiisuu irra jira jechuudha. Baadaan siisaa achi gubbaatti isa kan diinaa isa diinni nuun jedheetii fi isa nu ofii qabnu sana garaagara baafnee baruutu irra jira jechuudha. Amma fakkeenyaatiif waa'ee afaan yoo fudhannee yeroo afaan Oromoodhaa guddisuun irra jira jennu isaan immoo lakkee afaan Amaaraadhaa guddiftanii biyya Itoophiyaa guutuutti ittiin haasoftu sababa kanaatiif afaan Oromoodhaa jettan dhiisaatii afaan Amaaraadhaa isa Sidaamoo keessattis Tigraay keessatti dubbachuu dandeessanii afaan Amaaraadhaa baradhaa jedhaniitu akkaataa kanaatti nutti dhufu jechuudha. Nuyi garuu afaan Oromoodhaa aadaa kan jedhuutiin isa kan Oromoodhaa san positiivli fudhannee isa isaan immoo micciiranii fidanii afaan nu kaa'uu barbaadan namaa gad nu gochuudhaaf isaan san immoo kireetiin sun sakanfaa akka isaan ta'an barree nama keenyatti himnee hin ta'u jennee dura dhaabbachuu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haile.
Sirna gadaa kan ittiin beekamtu mallattoon si oola. Anis biyyaan qabaa kan ittiin taatadhu. Biyya tokko Oromiyaa kan hin jiruuf abdadhu.
We are on our last presenter of the day. Moving along, the next presenter is probably he's been my role model all my life, a person that I looked up to since I was a little boy, and I still do. And by chance, complete chance, he also happens to be my mother's younger brother. Dr. Bahiru Dhuguma will share a little bit about. We all know communication is key in leadership and organizations, but we hope that he will shed light on what effective communication looks like and how a leader can become successful by using effective communication tools. Dr. Bahiru Dhuguma is an international development and diplomacy expert with 30 plus years of successful career in government and international. My son wants me to smell something. Okay. My apologies. Dr. Bahiru Dhuguma is an international development and diplomacy expert with 30 plus years of successful career in government and international agriculture research and development organizations in Africa, Asia, and the US. Between 1980 and 1999, Dhuguma served with 3 international agriculture research organizations as a researcher and research program manager, rising to the position of principal scientist and coordinator of a regional research program. Dhuguma joined the United States Agency of International Development in 1999 and has served as a senior advisor in USAID Washington, Foreign Service Officer and team lead in USAID Kabul, and Food Security Office Director in USAID New Delhi, India. He led the design, procurement, and management of multi-million-dollar global agricultural research and development programs implemented through Select U.S. Land Grant Program International throughout Select U.S. Land Grant Universities and the CGA-IAR centers. He has authored or co-authored 2 books and 50 plus articles in peer-reviewed international journals and conference proceedings. Dr. Dhuguma, the floor is yours and you have precisely 25 minutes.
Okay, galatomi Tisho. Hunduma keessan irra deebi'ee isin galateeffadha. Waamichi keenya fudhatanii dhufuu keessanii fi wanta baay'een jedhameera dhugaa dubbachuudhaaf keessumaa leadership irratti akka inni slaidii consuming goone fedheen malee typical waaniin ani dhiyeessuudhaaf jedhu effective leadership and successful leadership and effective communication in a full type insa. While leadership irratti danut odeeffame. So I probably wouldn't dwell too much on it, but for the purpose of tracking what I had in mind when I put this together, I would once in a while go back and refer to it. As part of my introduction, I will touch on certain perceived challenges of Oromo organizations, which actually prompted us to put this program together. And then I'll see if I can kind of give a sense of a link between successful leadership and effective communication. I will touch on some aspects of leadership style matrix because of what I want to say down in the next section to lay the groundwork for that. And then for lack of better word, I decided to call this successful leaders attributes. Most of it we have already discussed it in detail. And then I'll move on to how successful leaders effectively communicate. So the key word there is really about effectiveness. What makes communication effective? And I'll see if I can highlight that in practical terms, what it means from the experience of leaders that are known around the world. What have they done? What do they do? Why were they successful? I cannot upfront tell you whether successful leadership is part of their trait as effective communicators, or is it effective communication that makes them successful leaders? I think we can have that conversation. Then I recap what I say there with another one slide at the end. Now, what are the perceived challenges facing Oromo organizations based on what we, those of us in this room primarily, and then a very large segment of our population complain about Oromo organizations? Tokkoffaga Oromo organization, they were organizations that emerged over the last probably 60 years. Before then, Raifi Yung Kamnutre, Maka Oromotin Abbachu, Gajata Madrasimo Wari Alate, a good number of them, the pioneer organization like Oil Left and Co. or clandestine organization that thankfully after so many years are now globally recognized. It are competing interest, self and shared interest due to Oromo case leadership Kuni is a pervasive problem. It affects many organizations. With good intention, at the end of the day, you end up in seeing the people who created hanging on to it as if it is their own tea shop. President for Life Syndrome is I would be glad to hear from you how many Oromo organizations you have known over the last 60 years have resulted in the leadership change. And in Beko, Rabbi Jedhati na barsiisa. Akkuma isin jedhe jireenya keenya keessatti kan baay'een isaanii dhalatanii 99% isaanii warruma yeroo sana uumeeniti gaggeeffamaa jiru yookaan gwaaddanyoota isaanii yookaan family member isaanii whatever you call them. Trust deficit walamanuu dhabuun rakkoo guddaadha jaallannu jibbinuun. Abuun sun immoo inherent bias to jira. That is what seems to cut across most of our organizations. Aba keessa duwwaata tun ta'een yeroodhuma wal agarrullee immoo we maybe because of our spoken language culture we were prohibited from developing our own written language a while back. So we tend to talk a lot. And very impatient. We don't listen. We don't wait to listen with a clear mind, without any bias, without trying to interpret what the person who is talking in front of us is telling us. In fact, before he even says, we want to read into his mind based on what we think, where he comes from, or what we think he thinks. So we talk a lot. We listen, very limited listening. Limited objective analysis. In ishee kana keessumaati, critical thinking is something that you acquire, but also for a normal average human being, yoo kun gurraacha yoon jedhee itti aanee maalidha kan dhufuu danda'u inni logically of hin gaafannu. So there is this objectivity missing. Most of our conversation more driven by our wishes, desires, wants alone. I'll see if I can explain that when I get to limited theoretical and practical leadership skill. In Nikuni, the division there, Garbumma Kesa Jatu, Yero era. Aba Kenya ka abane tini imma himbane jago amne rakok amna akani mana barumsa yo warra Ethiopia thani male akka oromoti akani barani naman thani nurra thani rawajat frame theory beekumsaanis mana barumsaas gallee mana barumsaa gallee barachuudhaaf chaansii keenya limited ture compared to particularly kun hundumtuu relativeidha. I'm comparing to our competitors instead of calling them inanis yoon jedhe. And then leadership role misconception inni kunis jira yeroo baay'ee, which is probably part of the limited theoretical and practical leadership skills. And yet, as a leader, Maltunura Egama, Maltunura Egam Senayu by qabna. I'm saying this just from my personal experience. There are times when leaders basically shrink in their responsibility and try to blame others who are working under them. They'll say, this is the kind of thing that you hear, where that is literally prohibited if you call yourself a leader. You're a leader, the buck stops with you. You have to take responsibility. I would have loved to see more sign that people to have shown up. But I don't blame those guys who did not show up. I think when we're done with this, I think we're going to regroup with our team, and then we're going to brainstorm on why people are not joining us. As leaders, there is something that we have not done that ought to have been done. That is, whether we like it or not, no matter how bitter it is, that is a fact. Let me go to the next slide. Anas by Indubatamera. Nani Vini Abate, want a good diadudan, but who is not effective in communicating, who is not effective in getting that message out, is probably like a candle that is burning in an enclosure. Hin ibsa, hin ifa, hin gubata, but homana meti imabon ifa sanatti. Akka sanata uda, nami tokko yo bekumsa qabate, yo visionii qabate, wanta guddaa arge, isa sana buusisuudhaafi namoota wajjin hojjechuutu irra jira, isaanan godha hojjete, inni jiru ta'e communication sun jiru ta'e gatii dhaba jechuudha. You can have the greatest idea, kuni Goldman around quote, you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you can't persuade anyone else to follow, your vision, your influence and impact will be greatly diminished. Leaders, many people can call themselves leaders, and they are truly leaders, but in terms of envisioning something and creating an organization. Leading that organization to success requires a completely different talent in the Kobal. So successful leadership, leading at Dedda. Leaders who reach the top study the art of effective communication in all its forms, writing, speaking, presenting constantly. In the Kunisa office sanity of Barsisan to do wahinta ini, especially technical areas of communication in Akunik Asfratti, one hojjetan is wanta agarsiisan is akkamitin akka office side miti wanta hojjetan sana namni inni kaan isaan ilaale hojjechuu kan danda'u waan ittiin godhani. All forms of expression that comes from the successful leaders is part of the effective communication skill that you got. Namati, the same source, Goldman. I'm trying to give you, I'm not going to go through this table. There are different leadership styles. There is commanding, visionary, which is a keyword for me. That is what really distinguishes successful leaders from just leaders. And then affiliated, democratic, pace setter, and if I'm coaching, I don't want to go through this. Let me just focus here on the green side. At the end of the day, overall impact of all these leadership style can be categorized as very negative. All of them can be necessary at different times. These five are commonly exhibited every single day by any leader. However, most successful, most strongly positive outcome is a visionary leader. What is the modus operandi of visionary leader? Mobilizing people towards a vision. This is really the key component of successful leadership. Namni tokko yaada guddaa qabaate wanta mul'isuu danda'u godhee dhaabe isa kana gaggeessuu nama danda'an namoota persuadii godhee namoonni akka isaan isa fudhatanii akkuma inni passionately, as far as keyword, passionately ta'anii akka isaan deeman sana isa inni passionately ta'e sana wanta sana irratti akka namoonni kan passionii sana develop gochuu danda'an gochuu danda'u taanaani relatively is a wasted big idea or big vision jechuudha. Come with me. In Dendo, they know how to get people around that idea. Self-confidence, empathy, change catalyst. Why FDR back to how in the most depressed environment he was able to mobilize America. When change required a new vision or a clear direction is needed, you need a visionary leader. Is the most positive leadership style. It's a kind of demand immediate compliance. If you are at a war front, you're not going to ask for people to give you feedback on what you want to plan to do. You have to tell everybody line up and go and shoot, and that is where. But is it the most effective way of providing leadership? Probably not necessarily, especially if you're in a normal environment. Environment in negative affiliative and democratic in the is positive in most cases. Pace setter in the Kuni is close to commanding, do as I tell you to do, but usually creates a very corrosive environment, working environment. And then coaching, it is positive. You spend more of your time and talent and resources in making sure that people are equipped with the kind of knowledge they need to do what you want them to do. Who are successful leaders practically, and what do they do? Asitti daga waa'ee communication key waanii godhee kanan ilaalu. Kuni baay'eetu jira, but biyya lafaa irratti yeroo baay'ee maqaan isaanii deebi'ee kan dhaga'amu warri kuni, they are in the top tier. Mandelaadha, FDR, eenyu namichi Britain kuni Prime Minister Britainidha, Mahatma Gandhi, Reverend Martin Luther King, and then Abraham Lincoln. They have a strong idea, big picture of where to go, where they want to take people. And there is nothing you can possibly do to get them diverted from that big idea. They are big time risk takers. FDR is known, filatame American Depression, and he believed in taking a bold step. He believed in thinking big, knowing that failure would even bring more disaster. But he said, no, if you fail, you dust up and then you start something else. But you cannot paralyze yourself by not thinking big and then trying it. Lead by example is a Canada kan Kenya Yoruba kan rakunu agaru afaan maduwadaan dubbateeti namni ofiisaati wanta inni jettu communication by doing what you preach tend to lack in many leaders. Successful leaders basically lead by example. It's not only they preach, it's not only they show you direction, it's not only that they give you that big idea, but you see them walking the talk towards that big idea. Demonstrate integrity, which is very critical, communicate effectively, except the communicate effectively, including communicate effectively, make hard decisions, essentially like FDR, what he did when he ruled the United States, when he came to office. Recognize success and reward it, motivate and inspire, influence others to get things accomplished, give others the benefit of doubt, credibility, very critical. They are always teachers. They delegate. They don't hang on to things. Nama amanu, nama dandeettii qabu in argu akkamittiin akka responsibility kennan hin beeku, and then when they delegate, they empower that person in full, not halfway. And of course, the same empower others. How they communicate is again a successful, effective communication. Key ingredients are what I have listed here. Active listening. Experience keessanii irraa hin agartu ta'a. Yeroo baay'ee yoo observan anneeteenyi nama dhaggeeffanne namni mana keessa jiru ni gaaffii gaafachuuf inni dubbachuudhaaf wixxifatu hamma inni dubbatu hundumaa yeroo laannee fi utuu jenne, by the time everybody has spoken, you may find out that in fact you don't need to ask anything or you don't even need to say anything. Want to buy inside it agar. Lammaffani audience appropriate ta'uu jira. Keessumaati, if you are a leader and you are the one who is communicating, you really have to understand the profile of your listeners. If you are having somebody who is a farmer who has never been to naannoo Laqamteetti argamee hin beekne, as opposed to a professor from Harvard, mana tokko keessa jiru yoo ta'e, you have to learn, you have to figure out how you want to get your message across to both people in the same room, with the same language. That is what successful leaders do. They recognize the presence of people in that room and they target their content of their speech to make sure that everybody gets it. Clear. I have worked with somebody who said, Bahiru, you give people 1 or 2 words and then let them figure out. You don't clarify. I'm not to complain, you got to clarify and I go to it. And then somebody who said, that's my supervisor, but we're very close as a friend. So namona kasida confidence think about your friend. So what do? They leave you in cloud and expect you to come up with idea to solve it. To leaving a room for themselves to either deny or accept responsibility. Concise. Yeroba inu rakunu ikamnu as Oromos. Amma moha mosati chala do fina sakata Oromo duwami ifamana do tamaleni roni lalu biye Kenya ti wonto defamu. Inna in the end. And I'm looking for full stop and I can barely see. So concisely, what you choose is very successful leaders are very concise when they communicate. They are very concrete. They don't leave anything to ambiguity. They are very coherent. when they communicate. They're very considered. They choose their words carefully. They avoid anything that may be interpreted or screwed, irritating, frustrating, or demeaning to other people. They are always complete. They are courteous. They communicate with the people with respect. They are always confident because they know what the heck they're talking about anyway. They're empathic, the same as being considered, feel about other person, especially the people that they lead. They respect you for what you do. They acknowledge that. They communicate in 100 different ways. Reward, verbal congratulation, holding some event for you, whatever, to make the people they lead be aware that they are valued and they see that they are making a difference for the organization. They give and also receive constructive feedback. Very often, it's easy for people to come and tell you, sometimes actually lying to you, oh, you did great. This is very good for diplomatic, whatever. You don't have to go out of your way and tell what you just said is rubbish. You don't either to be able to give a useful, constructive feedback in a way that is palatable to listener. And successful leaders know how to do that. Successful leaders know how to receive constructive feedback. And then understanding nonverbal messages. And if you're a leader, successful leader, if you're an effective leader, just by the way your people come in and go out of the office, over time, you will realize the day they are excited, the day they are happy, the day they are depressed. And it is up to you as a successful leader to be aware of that and make sure that you interact in a way that is not intrusive, but in a way and with a single sole purpose of trying to understand and solve that person's problem if you can. I am now recapping. I don't want to call this a conclusion. Successful leaders are visionary. I have said that over and over again. And the previous speakers have said that. They are people-focused, coming up with a big idea, having a big vision is one part of the whole equation to be a successful leader or for a successful leader. So they are people-focused. I have repeatedly mentioned they care, they study, they try to find out, reward, or solve their problem. They command, they don't demand. Command jechuun wanta isaan hojjetan sila namni gaafateera. Akkamittiin trustii si godhu, akkamittiin amanta leader. Very easy. You can see there are a host of things that leaders do that make you worship them. They do. It's a warra. Do you know who I am? In this injedu, that is not a leader. That is the one who is demanding you to respect it. That's not what leaders do. Successful leaders do. Successful leaders do their job. Successful leaders understand you. Successful leaders, they coach you, they teach you, they make you productive human being for that organization. And what would that do to you? You trust them, you see what they say, you see what they do, and therefore build that confidence, and therefore you worship them. Persuasive, effective leaders are indeed convincing. Words match deeds. They communicate very clearly, concise, complete, short and simple. They're very logical. They listen intensely. And then, of course, self-aware. That is a key ingredient of successful leaders. And they always encourage, coach strategic thinking. Both in a verbally communicated way, by doing it, or even from their programs that they try to institutionalize to make people in that organization more productive. They think 24/7 on how to lead, go to the next stage, and do that by the people or with the people or using the people that they lead, not do it by themselves. Galatoom, as Maratan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dhuguma. That was very informative presentation, and I hope everybody, if not everything, but learn at least a few things. I love the non-verbal communications. I'm very big on those. But I'll give a chance to anybody who wants to ask questions or comment first before I try to speak as less as possible. Here's your chance. Dr. Moa, you go first.
Yeah, Dr. Bahiru Galatomi. I think we are putting, I know it is a topic of the discussion, too much emphasis on the leadership, but also there is equally important to consider who are led kanjero. I'm a Gafina and Dr. Bahura. Is a duty ho if ne asmati we rumor in your case at tea. Abadenu leadership piden jenne bafne. Hundinu fashalai argirasit. What is the problem? Is there anything inherent to why we are failing that? Namotenu avene gagesna yen gagestion namajene asmat wa make arabne wa make digami argajira. So is there inherent problem with this?
Good question. I'll ask one from Dr. Maku and then we'll go to you, Dr. Dhuguma.
Yeah, garatoma on the case barumsa guddaa ture an arganne har'a waan tokko garuu anaaf xinnoo confused waan godhan jiru fakkeenyaaf deddeebi'ee yaanimamu rakkoon har'a qabnu garboonni gatii garboomneef yaan jedhus jira waa'ee garbummaa kun waggaa baay'ee haasa'ama kanuma wajjin wal qabsiisne awareness inni jedhus xinnoo wajjin ilaalamu natti fakkaata awareness har'a ilaallu kun Dr. Haile no tuke ture bal'inaan iyyuu tuke garbummaa keessaa bahuu dadhabneeti hanqabsoon keenya qancaree isa jedhu wajjin akkam ilaalama hamma kana gadheedha awarenessiin Oromoon keessa jiru Oromoon baay'ee guddachaa qaba miti har'a waggaa 60 as waan baay'ee dubbatame waa'ee garbummaas akkamitti kun har'a akka rakkootti ilaalama awarenessiin keenya hamma kana loowudhaan jedhudha inni lammaffaa immoo waa'ee generally dubbatamaa ture leadership kana environment kam keessatti akka ilaallus hubachuu qabna society akkam keessattidha leadership in developed society yookiin immoo akka biyya keenya oddoo diktatoriitti leadership akkamiitu biqiluu qaba kan jedhu waan baay'ee nama haasofsiisudha what we hear today anuma just one year tokko experience isa hanime jira garuu anuma barumsa keessa darbine barumsaattis fiildi keenyas ta'e immoo politikeenya umniku isa jedhan sana follow up yoo goonu hambarannudha biyya keenya keessatti yoo galle garuu conditionin isaan biraati leadershipin har'achi keessatti hojjechuu danda'u factory an biraatu isaaf jira natti fakkaata kan akkamitti walitti fiddu garbummaa nu qaqqabee fi awareness keessa jiru.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Bahiru. Let's take 2 more questions. You take your notes. We'll take from Damise and Jamal. Dr. Damise, you're next, and Jamal, please take 1 or 2 minutes each.
Yeah, just 1 minute. I mean, by Galatoma, Dr. Bahiru, that is excellent presentation. One question I have is there such thing as effective leader always? I mean, successful leader, effective leader, Jannu Kuni, is that not relative? Malifi situation adada, namni tokko har'a iddoo tokko irratti successful yoo ta'e iddoo biraa irratti garuu successful ta'uu hin danda'u. So we don't expect all-rounded successful leader. Waan tokko namni tokko organizationii tokko gurmeessee cimsee fuulduratti adeemsisuudhaaf dandeettii qabaachuu danda'a. Coordinate gochuudhaafi ammoo liidarii viizhinarii ta'ee immoo fuulduratti deemuudhaafi dandeettii sanan qabu ta'a. So don't you see collaborative approach be more effective than just a leader? Isa jedhu kaasuu barbaade ulfaadhu. Relatiividha malee successful effective leader nu jennu kuni it doesn't work always. Isa jedhu itti dabaluuf ulfaadhu.
Thank you, Jamal. And then I'll get okay.
No, it's a good presentation. I have two questions regarding Ethiopian Empire. Most of institution was dominated by one colonialism. There are so many institutions in Oromia, not also dominate language. Afan ko dominate godhatti jirani, organization illee dominate godhatti jiran. Kanaaf furmaata akkatti gaafiin inni lammaffaadha. Waa'ee self awareness irratti waan guddaa nu barsiiftanii baay'ee galatoomaa jechuun barbaada.
Galatoomi, Dr. Bahiru, chaansii siif kennee achi booddee namni sadii namni harka kaasee jira. I'll give you a chance to answer this. I think you're not a mute, so go ahead.
Okay. One is why the failure, Sajeruda. You know, I wish I know for sure what is the reason and in a position to fix it. But most of my thought is basically based on what I have learned in life. And I'm not a young man. So what that suggests to me more is that particularly looking at Oromo organization across the board, political organizations, I don't question for a second how dedicated, how passionate, how whatever both as leaders or as conscious Oromos we are to see ending slavery. However, something that many of you may not like to hear, including each and every one of us in this room, we don't seem to realize when we blur the difference between giving yourself 100% for the cause of that organization or what that organization stands for versus at the back of our mind, what we think is the best for Oromos. Therefore, need to follow your thinking to get to where we want to go. In other words, we fail repeatedly to divorce our personal drive from collectively thinking what is the best approach, what is the best organization, what is the best idea or ideology, what is the best strategy that we need to adapt, extracted from the many brilliant brains that we have that will take us to our end goal, freedom. That, in my opinion, explains, and I can go to details and then give you litany of examples. That is responsible, in my opinion, for the failure of many of our organizations. I have been told by somebody who is establishing an organization, honey, I'm in this business because my dad sacrificed for it and I love my dad. That is a kind of thinking. Somebody is fighting for Oromo cause because his dad did something for Oromo or wanted to see Oromo free or whatever. So yada kasakasi kana yeron ilalu hamninan jiru. Samni Kenya, hundumti Kenya, we are really passionate, willing to do something, but we fail to differentiate that line. Makbib, self-awareness, I will leave that to Haile to comment. Demise, I agree with Dr. Demise. It is dependent, Garu dependent erosion and silas jalqaba masaa kana waan jechaa ture why successful leaders jaan dubbataa ture fidha. However, within that there is a huge spectrum of leadership, and we need most of those leadership to get any organization functioning properly. So I'm not saying that one has to be always visionary and then be able to drive. Everybody should be a preacher like Martin Luther King for us to do what we want to know. We have different ingredients of leadership styles that are relevant and needed in Amana. Jamal gaaffii keenan galle hankeenya jireenya keenya aboliin keenya janaman dominated ture manamni jette, but what is the question there?
Jamal, can you clarify your question?
Gaaffii nan galle.
Gaaffii inni ka dura kolonializimii irratti kolonializimiin kun naannoo Oromiyaa keessatti waan hedduu gaggeessaa jira, especially afaan dabalatee kan addaatis akka organizationii tokko NGO ta'a, dhaabota alaa dhufan ta'a kan sabuma tokkoon dominate ta'ee jiru jechaadha. Kuni akka gubbaa dhufe sanitti hawaasa bira gahuutti hin jiru yaada jedhuun qaba.
Oh, yeah, I mean, fall out in the colonial system in I. Amma dhiiga keenya keessa jira, mana kana keessa teenye. Amantus amanuu dhabaattus. I always use practical examples to make my point, and I don't want to go too far. Tuni warra alaqaa kootee jiraadhe warra gwaaddanyaa kootu hin ta'e manuma kootii jalqabeen ilaala. I look across spectrum of my own relatives. Wanta namni jecha afa deemaa jiru kuni waa'ee colonial system hammam akka inni nu hacuuce maalirraan akka inni nu ga'e ibsuudhaaf kan jechuun jedhu. In the process, I want to answer McWeb's question. Hamma yawwanaayyuu hirribaan ka'ee jiraan unateetu. McWeb, you will be shocked. Yes, compared to Anifat Yero University to wanta jirurra amma dogaarii jira. Thanks to Kume generation. But we are light years away from being where we're supposed to do in terms of ending slavery. Why? Out of nothing less than, out of 100 people that I know related to me, Iga, Fonin, Anatti, Hanamanako, Turiyatan Kesati, we are less than 5% who live Oromo life today. In a very uncertain terms. About 50% of them are right now, as I speak to you, lining up fighting for Abi and for Orthodox Christian Church. I'm telling you, namana tajiramit. Hamas mitikun. Ugan masittimajir. Kuni pirota ko iga poti. Okay? So this is where we are. And I bet you, Manakana Keskanjistondum to you have that kind of challenge. And that is where we are. Wantini nuch absan suni, late Kenya kesalite, Rabbi Nagalatu Kesab Ajira, Abat Ajira. That's not too bad. But hey, when you how often do you call your friend's telephone number and then you hear at the background somebody speaking in American? To the best of your knowledge, you don't know anybody who lives in that house. So number 5, I mean, I can go on listing stuff.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll take, we'll take the next round of questions. We'll start from Mekra and then Kanani. And then we'll take maybe 2 more before you answer. Just take notes, Dr. Dhuguma. Mekra, it's yours.
Bahiru,
you're mute.
Yeah. Wani ati jette waan itti mormu tokko iyyuu hin jiru. Wanti kuni waanuma biyya lafarra jiru waan ittiin hojjetamaa jirudha. Garuu Oromiyaatti hin deebi'u, Oromootti hin deebi'u. Waa'ee Oromoo haasa'aa jirraa ilaatamoo warruma mana barumsaa dhaqee waa baratee warra akka keenyaa kanaa waa'ee isaanii haasa'aa jirraa jedhee isa makuu jedhee wajjin wal qabsiisee even kan waan jedhee wajjin illee wal qabsiisee on ilaalu waan gara biraan argaa jiran. Waan an argaa jiru muuxannoo mataa kooti. Muuxannoo dheeraan qaba waggaanuma wajjin deema muuxannoon. Community development workeriin ture gidaamee biyya jedhamu. Jaarsolii wajjin uummata wajjin hojjenna. Achitti leadershipiin akkamitti akka functioning godhu kan biyya lafaa wajjinan ilaalatu hin ta'in kan Oromoo keessa kaayee hin ilaalu kan magadaa wajjin adeemeetu uummanni keenya sun akka malee disipiliinii ta'uurraa kan ka'e wal dhaggeeffachuu isa diidii isa godhu immoo dhaggeeffachuu yoo nammaati immoo itti himuu akkas ture.
Baay'ee fayyaa ta'a. Warri barnoota nuu kennitanii yaada keessan kanas nuu hirtanii ulfaadhaa galatoomaan jedhaa yaada baay'ee miidhagaadha. Ani ka guyyaa guutuu qoodan fudhanne walga'icharraa kan hin dhaggeeffadhe speakersii warra dubbatan lamaan duwwaan dhaga'e. Garuu gaaffiin ani qabu waa'ee hoogganaa yeroo dubbannu hoogganni tokko waan irra dhaabbatee uummata yookiin dhaaba isaa hoogganuu qaba. Kana jechuun ideoloojiitu jira. Sirna ittiin uummata yookiin miseensota geggeessutu jira. Amma kan isin lafa keessanii keessattuu Dr. Bahiruun lafa kaa'ee waa'ee hoogganaa akkani hubadhutti hoogganaa waan biyya western dimokiraatii kana keessatti akkamitti akka hojjetudha. Garuu akkuma amma Dr. Makuriyaan jedhe yoo gara Oromootti deebine waa'ee hoogganaa yeroo haasofnu maalirra dhaabbanneeti akkama Dr. Makuriyaan jedhe sirna gadaa sanarra dhaabbanneeti achirraa kaanee hoogganni keenya maal fakkaataa attamitti nu geggeessaa innee maayidu kiraayiteriyaa lafa keewwannee ittiin ilaalluutu jira. Yoommoo gara Itoophiyaatti immoo achas deebine Itoophiyaan kan warras keessa jiru yookaan beeku warri tarii umuriidhaan hin bubbulliin yookiin umuriin isaanii baay'ee guddaan ta'in hin beekan ta'a malee nuyi warri kaan bara feudalizimii Haile Sillaasee keessa jiraanne jirra. Achi keessatti hoogganni akkatti uummata bushutu jira yookiin dhaaba bushutu jira. Achi dhufee central democratic centralismiitu dhufee dhaabbileen Oromoo ani hamman beekutti akka yaaddutti warri oppidooyyuu ammallee sirna democratic centralismii sanaan waan hojjetan natti fakkaata. Kanaaf gaaffiin ani qabu Dr. Bahiruu yeroo waa'ee hoogganaa dubbattanii ideological background isaas akkamirraatii dubbattanii nuuf immoo maaltu mala haala amma nuyi keessa jirru kana keessatti keessattuu akkuma amma Dr. Makuriyaan jedhe biyyaa wajjin yeroo wal qabsiisnee ilaallu. Fayyaa ta'a.
Atoma Addekanani, thank you very much. We have probably 5 minutes. I'm going to see the skills of the two audience that is going to ask a question, and Dr. Bahiru is going to be concise. Kan jedhu amar kana rattargina. Dr. Gammachu fi Dr. Hambisaan gaaffii keessan gaafadhaati. I expect very concise and to the point answer from Dr. Bahiru to conclude. And then we have some closing remarks before we finish. So Dr. Gamachu, your turn.
Hello, Tisho Galatomi Dr. Bahiru Leba Galatomi Jecho Barabada. Gafin how to sell vision or how to implement your vision kajedu achirratti waan takka alamo jecho barbate ifama daddafa irratti umara kin jiru 2005 way suggestive godhe Catholic Church keessatti amma waan sinodosi afaan oromoti inni haasaa jiran kanaaf maaliif fi ummanni kenna right fi uumanne akka Israel if Latin right in jiru Oromoon ko fi uumatun danda'u kan baay'ee hunda akka hordofu jechuuf attamiin hojjetuu danda'ama. I think they might have right time or right audience. Attam godhuu danda'ama visionii can implement godhuuf jechuuf jira galatu.
Thank you. That's a very visionary question. In lieu of time, I will skip Dr. Hambisa, forgive me, and we'll go directly to Dr. Bahiru, so you can concisely answer and comment on the points that were raised by the in several individuals.
We all asked very challenging questions, quite very personal but very challenging questions, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, nor am I going to try to be diplomatic. And I can Dr. Mokrias can Arpasesi will take up in the visa, really. Nuni, as Oromos, we have an institution, we have the establishment, we have a system. Hojjeture amma maaliif hojjechuu didee yoona galeera ta'e yookaan in absence of our failure maal gochuu qabnaadha.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, ani akka amanutti Professor Mokre adda arfaase har'a leaders akkaataan itti dhaabni tokko gaggeeffamu yookaan leaders or leadership amma si'ana operate gochaa jiru biyya lafaa irratti waggaa baay'ee keessa evolve dhufee dana ga'ee aadaa dhibba meeqa keessaa walitti dhufee dana ga'ee researchii meeqa keessaa hojjetamee dhufee dana ga'e. None of the way whatever the Brits did their business the 200, 300 years ago or 1,000 years ago, Germans did their own whatever. So it is the experience translated into a better leadership, a better way of doing business that cumulatively brought us to where we are today. Anisi, I gadarra wanta baay'ee baranna wanta keessa fudhanneetti dhimma ba'uu qabna, but gadarra dhaabannee gara fuulduraatti deemnu jechuuni, in my opinion, it is not the right thing. For me, there is one way of providing good leadership. We know it. proven by science. It is working every day. CEOs are fired around the world because they are not performing. Nobody is firing everybody in that organization. There is a problem with the leadership. Our leadership is not any different from any other successful or failed leaders. So, yes, we have been far behind. The art of leadership, Jabanama keessatti iddoo jirrutti itti dhimma baane gara fuulduraatti deemuu dandeenya jedhu yaadu duwwaadha. That is my thinking. We can have this separate conversation. How can we translate that into action? You just say nagafatan. Gamachu, if vision kana akamitini, yeah, it's good to have a vision, but how can we make that vision a reality? Guys, gamachu kana gabatan.
Akkasuma jedheeti right time if right audience barbaachisa miti vision jiraate fi miti jedhe amma 2005 irratti vision hoyi qabaataa turre Oromoon akkuma Israa'iti jarri qabu Latin right or faranjoota qabu maaliif ko ofiin qabaanne ritually odo eebbaaf waan baay'ee qabnaa gariif maaliif qabaatu dadhabne ka jedhu san.
Isin kun egaa saayinsii miti dhugaa dubbachuudhaaf matsaafa kana keessatti arge waan hin jedhu qabu ani I still continue to explain it out because of where we are in our ability to lead ourselves. Iddoon amma jirra isuma sila himaa turedha. Inni nu gaggeessus inni duukaa deemurra jirus even our level of consciousness eessa jirra. Visionii keenya kan jirurraan ga'uudhaaf kan nuyi dadhabaa jirruu fi rakkoo kanatu jira isa keessaatii ba'uu qabna. Makriya raised about the PP nama baay'eetu leessa mana kana keessaatii Oromoodha isaanis ijoolluma keenya blah blah blah. Ani ifama naa godhaa malee I don't see that way. I don't see them as our children capable of leading us. Oromota usaanii kaadaa jiran itti ifama naa godhaati. I can go on record without any fear or favor. Waggaa 30 dura grouping kun yeroo dhalatanii Tigreetu nu uume nutu uummataniti. Tigreetu nu fide nutu filataniti. Tigreen anaan bilisuma baasuuf hin kaane siin bilisa baasuuf hin kaane. Ijoollee keenya warra bilisa nu baasuuf ka'an araganii isa kaan hidhaniiti isa kaan ajjeesaniiti ijoollee ergaa ergachuu danda'an walitti qabaniiti dhaabanii. Komponentii isaan dhaaban san waamuu miti akkamittiin immoo gaggeessan waggaa 30 kana keessatti hojjettanii ilaaltanii inni kan keenya duwwaa miti kan keenyas kan Sidaamaas kan biraas sistemnitiin namni ofii isaatii jiraatee biyya isaa dinagdee maal hojjetee ittiin jiraachuu danda'u hundumtu yeroo akka inni caba godhanii and they did that by killing the human resource capacity of these regions. Kan Tigree duwwaa biyya special in galanii torban tokkoon fixii mana nagadaa bananii. And this is something that I know. Trade school akkasa nagadaa sooromanii. Isa booddee in less than 10 years they created elites of everything in that country, literally all of them made up of Tigrayans. Hindi nama digdama ta'anii dhufu mishiniin Itoophiyaa liidarii kan isaanii ta'ee kan dhufu nama waggaa 30 guunne highly educated Ph.D kan qabdu ri'oota alamii isaanii keessatti kan dhalatte inni kaan Oromoo Ph.D achi qabu maal jedhanii duukaa yaa'a ofii mataa isaanii express gochuu hin danda'an. That is how they control the system. So, Dr. Makhe, to answer you, right now, as far as those who are speaking on your behalf, on my behalf, in that government, they are not speaking for you. They don't have the capacity, the capability to do that. In Abani, in Jiru, Samun, Kanini Alatevis, Kanini Hojetes, Kanini Trenditis, Wanta Kambrad Afi, Binisuma or motive miti, si lapati Barbadun Sigo at Miti, Amana, and that is what we are seeing here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dhuguma. Congratulations, everybody. This concludes the first leg or first day of our 2-day leadership and organizational management skills webinar. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to all our presenters and our audience. I want to remind everybody to bring your friends and people in your committee that are leaders to tomorrow's presentation. We have another amazing, experienced lineup of presenters. And with this, I'm Tisho. And thank you very much for being with us today.
Galana keessa taa'eef dhagaan bishaan hin ta'u iddoo dhufee dataa deebotaa dhaabinnoo balbala isaa lakkooftes lakkoofsa guutuu hin ta'u sobamaan jiraatinii gaaffii keef deebiin ta'u dhugaa kan jaallatu dhugaa fowwaatu sabni dhugaa qabu garboomeen jiraatu. Dhugaa kan jaallatu dhugaa fowwaatu sabni dhugaa qabu garboomeen jiraatu. Dhugaa kan jaallatu dhugaa fowwaatu dhaloonni dhiidheeraa milkuu sabaa nyaatu naala baasalaatu. Atis anis dhugaa fowwaanna nutoo dhugaa qabna nanni sobaanna. Atis anis dhugaa fowwaannu nutoo dhugaa qabna.